Now, if you haven't watched the previous training video on absolute references, you want to watch that so you can get a better understanding of what we're talking about here, because this is basically part 2, or expanding upon absolute references that I lightly touched. And I want to drive that point home here in a different layout here. Now, as you recall, an absolute reference is a cell reference in a formula that remains the same when the formula is copied to another cell. So let's go ahead and create our formula here. I'm going to come up here and click in the cell. And what I want to do is I want to be able to figure out the commission for quarter 1 for the north area. So the north area has a commission rate of 12%. Multiply that by the total sales in quarter 1, and that's how much commission they're going to get. So to do that, it's a simple formula. Hit the equals key on the keyboard. Go ahead and select the cell that contains 12%. Hit the asterisk key on the keyboard, and that's the symbol for multiplication. Then come up here and select the cell that we want to multiply it by. C9 times D6, hit enter, and the total commission rate for the north area for the sales in quarter 1 is 300,000. Now I can go ahead and retype that same formula in all these other cells, which is fine, but we're about shortcuts, right? And the shortcut is to go ahead and copy and paste that formula into other cells. It's a lot faster than retyping in that same formula. So to do that, I'm going to come up here, select the cell, and let's just go ahead and figure the commission rate for quarter 1. So I can come up here and Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, or I can come up here and select the cell, hover over the lower right corner of the cell, get the autofill handle, that black cross, click and drag all the way down and let go, and it will also copy and paste that formula down into these cells. Now, as you recall in the previous training video, anytime you copy the formula, if we copy it to the next cell down, we're copying it down row by row, it wants to take that formula and update it relative to the new row that we copied the formula to. So we move down one, it also updated and moved the formula down one. How do we know? Let's go ahead and double click in this cell so we can see the outline of the formula and the cells it has selected. And it moved down one row, which is fine because obviously we're in the south area. We want to take their commission rate, not the north, so that's great. But it also moved down one row as well. Instead of referencing the cells for quarter 1 in D6, it moved down one. And it's also, when I go to the next cell, it's going to have that move down even further. Let me hit the escape key on the keyboard, double click, move down another row. That formula down below that is going to have it move down another row. So it's moving this down row by row. That should be a constant. That part of the formula that I originally had back up here for the North's commission, let me hit the escape key, double click, should reference that cell and be an absolute. In other words, we want it to stay, and this is how I had it memorized. Whenever I want a cell to stay in a formula, when I start copying and pasting it and updating it, well, in this case, row by row, as you recall in the previous training video, you click in front of the cell so the cursor's flashing, and you hit F4 on the keyboard. But how I memorize that is that if you want your dog to stay, or in this case the cell, but stay with me, you want your dog to stay Fido, stay. Well, the dog's name is Fido. It begins with the letter F, and it has 4 letters in his name, F4. I know it sounds corny, but hey, I bet you never forget it. In any case, we're telling the cell that the column here is D, and that the row here is 6, or the absolute reference of the column. Do you really need to absolutely reference the column here as we're moving down row by row? It's the row we need to not update, not the column, because the column's going to stay unless we actually update the formula by copying and pasting it over column by column. So in other words, I can go ahead and put my cursor in front of the dollar sign here, the first one, hit the backspace key, and now I have what's called a mixed reference cell. It's mixed in that the D, or the column here, is a relative reference. If I go ahead and I copy this formula over column by column, it's going to be updatable. It's going to be relative to the new column it's in, which is great because what's the next column I'm in right here? E. And it should be referencing, well, it'll be referencing the new column, which is part of the cell, which is going to be row 6. So that's good that I don't, if I go ahead and I want to calculate and copy this over to the next column, that I have that as a relative reference. No dollar sign in front of it, okay? But it's the row that I want it to stay because I'm going down row by row. So let me hit enter on the keyboard, go back up, select the cell. Of course, you can look up here in the formula bar. Again, nothing up my sleeves. In other words, I've got just one absolute reference, the dollar sign, in front of 6, row 6, and I can go ahead and click and drag that black autofill handle down and let go, and voila. Fido stayed on the cell. He didn't move out of his doghouse. He stayed there when we started walking away from him down row by row. Now, if we went over column by column, let me go ahead and select this cell, hover over the black autofill handle, And to copy and paste that formula, just drag over to the right for each quarter and then let go. Okay, something doesn't look right. Anytime you see these pound symbols here, that means that the cell is too small, that Excel can't display all the contents within the, the size of the column here. So what you can do is you want to come up here in between these two columns, column E and column F. And you can see when I hover over it, I get arrows pointing in opposite directions. You can either click and drag that out and keep going until you actually see the numbers. So Excel can actually say, okay, I can now display the large number here. Otherwise, if you click and drag it in, it says, I don't have enough space. Give me some space. So click and drag to the right, or if you just hover between the two, double click really fast, and it will do an autofit. In other words, it will take the longest data within this column here, which is this cell right here, and size the column to that cell. Come over here, double click really fast, and come over here, double click really fast, and yeah, something doesn't seem right. So if I click in the cell, double click, look what's happening. We got the column right? Because we're not telling it to stay. We don't have an absolute value reference to the column. We don't have a dollar sign in front of, well, we started over here and kept it to D. We just let it go. So it kept updating relative to the new column. But by the same token, what's also in this formula updating as we move it over column by column? Well, it's this one right here, D9. It should be referencing not D9, but column C or C9, the commission rate. So as we move over, let me hit the escape key, then this cell moves over to this column and it's taking this one and multiplying it by this. And then as we move over here, it's taking this and multiplying that by that. So you got to tell Fido when we're moving column by column, at least as far as the original formula goes, double click, that we want this cell, the commission rate right here, not to be updated as we go over column by column. So do we need to have an absolute reference on the row here, 9? No, because we're not moving by row, we're moving over by column. We want it to stay over in this column as we move away from the doghouse so Fido doesn't follow us, or the formula doesn't update relative to the new column, okay? So I can go ahead and click in front of C and hit F4. Of course, it adds dollar signs to both of them, but if I toggle through and hit F4 again, it'll remove the dollar sign from the letter C, hit again, adds it to the letter C, but removes it from row 9. That looks right? And then go ahead and hit Enter. Go ahead and select it so you can look up in the formula bar the absolute reference, the dollar sign in column C. It's going to keep the formula frozen in this column as we move it over to the right. So let's go ahead and click and drag the black autofill handle over to the right and let go. Okay, that looks better. If I just come over here and do a sample double click, let's see if it's referencing still the same commission, but updating and going over relative to the column, which is great because, hey, the sales for quarter 3 is going to be the commission for quarter 3. It's not going to be the sales for quarter 1 commission to quarter 3. Just want to come over. Let me go ahead and hit the escape key. Let's go ahead and fill the rest of this in. Click and drag the black autofill handle here. In fact, I can actually click and drag the black autofill handle for that range and come over here and then take a random sampling, double click and see if it's referencing. The commission for quarter 3 should be the sales for quarter 3. And also should be referring to the east area, at least the same row here. The commission rate is 10%. Looks good. Hit the escape key. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.